Good evening, and welcome back to the show. Today on the episode, we have H. Holmes, a very narcissistic person, to say the least. In the house today, I have Mr. Rich Little. Rich, thank you so much for joining me again. This podcast is going
okay,
awesome.
Seth. Don't you can drop the mister. I don't do that. I'm old, so you don't have to call me mister. So today we're going to talk about a man who never was.
Yeah, I know. Seriously,
H. Holmes. Everybody's heard about. Many people have heard about this case of what happened in right around the Lizzie Borden time, 1893, and the Chicago World's Fair, which was called the Columbian Exposition. It was a big deal in Chicago, and it drew people from all over the world. Even Lizzie Borden attended the Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893.
She did.
She did not stay at
the
Mr.
hotel.
Holmes's hotel or castle or whatever name that is attributed to it. But H. Holmes is not a real person.
No. Before we dive into H. Holmes, I'd like to give a special thanks to Barnabas Collins, 7711. He gave us our first ever.
Is it Barnabas Collins or just Barnabas?
Barnabas Collins? I think it's Barnabas. Yeah. Let's do a little, we're going to do a little cell phone check right here. I have it right up here. Yeah. Barnabas Collins 7711 for his support. First ever super thanks. So I want to super thank you and say thank you for your support. It's very much appreciated. It helps keep the show running. But back on H. Holmes.
Yes. Well, Mr. Holmes, interesting personality. A bright individual by his own admission. Went to Gilmanton, New Hampshire Academy, which is where he was born, up in central New Hampshire. And rumor has it that he went to Philip Exeter Academy, allegedly. That could be his own idea, but
there's a lot of allegedly with H. Holmes.
And he didn't go to school under the name of H. Holmes. He went to the school under the name of Herman Webster Mudgett, Mudgett. That was his given name. And he was born in 1861, right around the first few years of the Civil War. And got an excellent schooling, went to the University of Vermont. Left the University of Vermont to go to the University of Michigan, went to medical school. I graduated. The reports are that he was a mediocre student. However, as you told me when I came in today, he might have been last in his class.
Yep.
But what do they call the guy who graduates last in his class from medical school?
They call him doctor.
That's exactly
They do call him doctor.
and Dr. Mudgett did call himself doctor.
Yeah.
But he was more than a doctor. He was a schemer.
Yep.
He was a fraudster.
Yep. Liar.
And a liar and a murderer. Not necessarily in that order.
Right.
Reports say that he could have murdered up to 300 people, 200 people. That is just newspaper fodder. And we'll get into a little bit of an explanation on how the newspapers competed with each other, especially the New York newspapers, and made a lot out of this case.
New York Times, Boston Globe.
Similar situation.
They all have articles on Mudgett.
Yes, everyone had the story about Dr. Death and all of the other names that were attributed to him. Now, after graduating from medical school, he wound up in Chicago. Interestingly, let's talk about his married life.
Yes, because I was listening to a podcast on H. Holmes yesterday as I was mowing my grandmother's lawn, and they went deep into his married life. I heard a lot of dirty laundry from him.
Yeah, well, he married his first wife, Clara, in New Hampshire on July 4th. That was in 1878. And in 1886, he married his second wife, still married to his first wife, and her name was Myrta Belknap, and he married her in Minneapolis. And he had a son with his first wife, and a daughter with his second wife, and then he married his mistress, Minnie Williams. Wilhelmina, her name was Minnie Williams, and that's kind of an interesting story. And he also, he married Georgiana Yoke in 1894.
Do you want to start from?
Yeah, I'll start it from just that.
So, can you tell me a little bit about his the women in his life?
Yeah, he married somebody that he met in New Hampshire, and her name was Clara Lovering.
Good old Victorian names.
Yes. He married her on the 4th of July, 1878, and they had one child named Robert Lovering Mudgett. And then in 1886, while he was still married to his first wife, Clara, he married another person. Her name was Myra Belknap. He married her in Minneapolis, Minnesota. She was 24 years old. And they had a daughter. So he had a son by his first wife, a daughter by his second wife. He had a mistress named Minnie Williams, who he told people that she was his wife. And then in January of 1894, he married Georgiana Yoke, and that was out in Denver. And he was still married to the first two women when he married his third wife. So he's married to three people all at the same time. But it was okay because he didn't marry them under the same name. The first wife he was married as Mr. Mudgett, and then later on he was Mr. Holmes and who knows who else, because the aliases for H.H. Holmes go on forever. The most popular one he had was either H.H. Holmes or Dr. H.H. Holmes.
And his first wife stayed with him not stayed with him, but was legally married
All that time
up until his execution.
Right. Now he said he served papers that were supposed to go to her indicating that he wanted a divorce. And the reason he wanted to divorce his first wife was infidelity.
Yeah.
This is after he's already been married 2 times and represented another person as being his wife. Okay, so we start off with Herman Mudgett, given name, graduated from university as a doctor under that name, Dr. Herman Webster Mudgett.
Yes.
His most popular name, the one that he used first, was Dr. H.H. Holmes, and he started using that in 1886. And he started with a business in Chicago, building a large structure with retail space on the bottom floor, a pharmacy, because he took up the profession of being a pharmacist, which he could under his credentials of being a physician. Every time he had a new scheme, he had a new name.
Right.
Okay, so Henry M. Howard.
Yep.
Harry Gordon.
He likes the H's.
Alexander Bond. Not James, but Alexander.
My idol. James Bond.
O.C. Pratt. He loved the Pratt name.
He did?
No relation to Pratts we know. D.T. Pratt.
Yep.
Franklin P. Pratt. So he used 3 different Pratts as primary aliases, all for schemes and insurance fraud, getting false loans.
I had heard that he had made up essentially like a woman and a son or a father or something like that, and had them all perish. And then he was like a fake he was like another alias, and he inherited the insurance money. And
Yes.
It's like
And
his schemes.
he did that several times.
Yeah.
Some lesser known aliases that we know they have, and as I told you, he liked the name Pratt. Frederick Pratt James Pratt, Dr. Henry Gordon, Edward Hatch, Robert Lescock, and Martin G. Van Nostrand. Those are some of his lesser aliases. So he had all these aliases, and he went a lot of different places and did a lot of different crimes.
I had heard that he had spent time in Massachusetts, New Hampshire. He even gone down to Pennsylvania for a few.
Yeah, some of it. Well, he was executed in Pennsylvania. He was arrested in Boston, and then extradited to Pennsylvania to stand trial for the murder of the Fritzl family, both the father and then two of the children in Pennsylvania, and the third child he took to Canada, and that child was murdered in Canada.
Right.
So there's all kinds of stories of how many people he murdered. Some say 200, some say less, some say more. He admitted to 27.
Yes, so I've seen the 27, but he was only convicted, or the police can only vouch for 9.
Right.
Right.
Because the reason being, some of those whom he claimed that he murdered, they later found alive. Now, why would he do that? Well, he collected on their insurance.
Right.
He would either write out a policy on someone and then have them disappear, either formally disappear by murder or disappear just so they couldn't be found.
Sure.
And he would try to collect the insurance on that. Mm-hmm. So he did all kinds of schemes, horse theft, property theft, stealing from the dead, and stealing the dead. That was one of his initial crimes, was grave robbing.
So I had heard that in the the 1800s, and I don't know if this is true, but this is just what I heard, that if people were going for anatomy in university, that it was kind of accepted if they brought their own, sample or their own person to operate on. Is that true? Is there any? So they wanted you to bring your own,
if possible.
It's so crazy.
If possible.
It's so crazy.
Well, you know,
it was kind of like endorsed to bring your own. Your own.
Well, and the human skeleton
Specimen.
at that time was a valuable commodity.
Right.
So what these people would do is they would grave rob, and they wouldn't dig up a grave that had been there for 10 years. They would. It's easier to dig up a freshly
Sure.
laid grave, and take the body out of the casket and coffin, and then, as they did with the Borden skulls that we talked about last week, boil the body parts and get all the flesh and everything off, and then articulate the skull back together again using hooks and rings and rods. So when you presented an entire skeleton, it was all complete and stood with a stand.
Now, had you done that in the mid 19th century, would you have needed permission from the family or the descendants?
They stole them.
They just stole them.
They just stole them.
And universities were totally cool with that.
Well, it was just okay.
It was just kind of like look the other way type of thing.
Well, we can look at a case that happened at Harvard just a year ago, where somebody at Harvard in Boston, not too far away from us, was charged with selling body parts.
That's crazy.
And where did the body parts come from? Well, they were donated. Many people do not decide to go the funeral, internment, or cremation route. They decide to donate the body to a higher institution of higher learning, such as Harvard University. And somebody at Harvard University who is in charge of this program of accepting donated human remains was selling the parts all over the country to other universities who used them for medical training.
That's crazy.
And that case has not been fully resolved. Of course, you have a lot of people who are upset who donated relatives' remains to Harvard University for medical training, which is it's a worthwhile thing to donate your relatives to a program like that. But when somebody desecrates the dead by slicing up the body parts, a leg or an arm or whatever, and sending it
Organs.
right, sends it cross country to another school so they pay for it. And Harvard was not getting the proceeds.
I'm kind of like shocked that there's no like attached serial number, whether it be like, I'll tell you right now, like if I go buy handgun ammunition, I have to present credentials to purchase the handgun munitions now.
Right.
Or if I purchase a firearm, like a barrel or something, it has the number engraved on it. Or even parts of cars, bumpers and mirrors have serial numbers on them. So I'm kind of...
But not body parts.
Now, it's interesting to me.
We're all set with that.
So back to H.H. Holmes.
Yeah, so H.H. Holmes built this building. First it was going to be 2 stories. Then it became 3 stories in Chicago and on the south side. And he built this right around the same time that the Columbian Exposition was just beginning to get rolling, and he wanted to have this hotel ready for guests and other people who wanted to stay there. What do we know about the castle?
The title of the castle, like his actual name, like he named it like the World's Fair Hotel, right? Am I
Something
right?
like that.
Something.
Yeah. So he built this place and didn't pay the people who built it.
Yes,
Did not pay the people who supplied the steel. Did not pay the workers. So he was constantly in court. People were trying to get money for him. Meanwhile, he's scheming other things going on, like writing out insurance on people, and then collecting the insurance, either by having them disappear or by murder. What we learned about what they called the murder castle, Mr. Holmes's domain in Chicago, came from newspapers, primarily 2 newspapers in New York. One owned by Pulitzer. We all know what that name means with journalism.
Right.
And the other by Howard. Cut that.
Sure. So
William Randolph Hearst. And these two newspapers were in competition with each other, heavy competition. They were always trying to outdo each other. And it was called the period of yellow journalism. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
I have not.
Okay, so yellow journalism is attributed to those 2 newspapers in particular because there was a cartoon associated with both of the newspapers called Yellow Boy. And because this Yellow Kid, this comic strip that was in first one paper, Pulitzer's paper, and then the second in Hearst's paper, because they were about the Yellow Kid, everything that was in those newspapers was called yellow journalism because they were competing with each other for print, for headlines, for outrageous things to report.
Right.
And those newspapers were the ones that supplied a map of the Torture Hotel that belonged to H.H. Holmes. There's a little fact to what went on in H.H. Holmes's place of business and what is reported in the newspaper. There was torture chambers so reported and things like that. That can't be proven.
I've heard that they said he had a hanging room, but only because there was a rope hanging from the wall.
Right.
And that there was a cutting room, like where he would dissect people, but only because there was a couple of knives on the table. So I'm sure that these reports are a little skewed.
It was exaggerated, and they did it for profit. The newspapers did it for profit.
Trying to sell papers.
And he played into this, and he admitted to 27 murders. However, they could only really confirm 8 and probable for a total of 9, because some of the people who he claimed to have murdered, when they finally found them, they were still much alive.
Right.
And why did H.H. do that? Well, he became a victim of his own success and imagination. William Randolph Hearst paid him for his story.
Yeah.
While he was in prison prior to execution. $5,000 he got. And they said that, people have said that he exaggerated the numbers just to make himself look like the
biggest murderer Chicago has ever seen.
He's called America's first serial killer. He wasn't the first American serial killer. There were others before him, but not to the extent that he said he did. And of course, the newspapers carried it forward and said, well, it could have been 50, it could have been 100, it might have been as many as 200. There's no real proof behind that. There is proof that he killed the 3 people that he was executed for, and those were the 3 people in Pennsylvania, the 2 children and the father. That was a colleague of his who was in the business of scheming. They were writing out fake
Insurance
policies, or trying to cash real insurance policies on fake people. And he was murdered, and 2 of his 5 children were murdered in the Pennsylvania area, in the Philadelphia area. And then the 3rd child was murdered up in Toronto, Canada.
And I may be mistaken, but they found out about that family of 3 through teeth that were found, right?
Yes.
It was teeth, yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I had heard...
Dental records.
Yes. Right. I had heard that he basically did anything for money. I had heard a really interesting story on that particular show that I was listening to yesterday about how there was, I believe, a smallpox breakout in a particular village. So he took medicine, of which he stole, vaccines of which he stole, and went door to door within a village, knocking on the doors. Hey, this is mandated by, the town. You should take this particular vaccine. And a lot of people just went through with it, even though he didn't provide any credentials and was operating under a fake alias.
Well, he did some interesting things. He worked as a pharmacist, and there was a death of a child on taking some medicine.
I had heard about that. Yeah, and his name was kind of tarnished.
He soon left town.
Yeah, that was Pennsylvania, right?
Right.
Yes.
And he soon went to Chicago. Mm-hmm. There were no charges pressed. Of course, we're talking 1880s.
Right.
And the pathology back then isn't as it is today. They could do some testing, but I do not know if they tested that particular individual that passed away because they were sick when they did pass away. Unlike the Borden case that we talked about a week ago, where they suspected poisoning and they were able to find out whether or not the contents of the stomachs of both the Bordens had poison in it, and it did not. They were able to test for that. But in the case of this child in Pennsylvania who was sick and was given a medicine from a pharmacy where H.H. Holmes worked, and the child passed away, Mr. Holmes got out of Dodge rather quickly after that.
Right. So, the castle.
Yep. That was where most of the bad things that it's claimed that he did occurred. There was talk of a quicklime pit where he placed bodies to dissolve them. There was talk of a gas chamber and a crematorium furnace in the basement. All those things come from the newspapers of the day. especially those two newspapers in New York that were in direct competition with each other.
Sure.
And what happened back then, New York newspapers were really, important newspapers in the United States. And other newspapers around the United States would pick up the byline. Rather than sending the reporter to report on their own, they would
Report on the report.
exactly. They would pick up the story and then cover it. So I'm just going through my notes. Joseph Pulitzer, he was the buyer and owner of the New York World, and then William Randolph Hearst purchased the rival New York Journal, and those are the two newspapers that battle back and forth with scandalous headlines, a map of the interior of the murder castle, and none of that was legitimately true. As you said, found knives, that must be the dissecting room. Found a rope, that must be where he hung people. Found a gas line.
Must gas people. Yeah.
He used that to gas people, and there's no real truth to that at all. There was no proof of that. A lot of places back then had gas lines into rooms for lighting purposes.
Sure.
Because that 1880s, there was a lot of houses and businesses that used gas for lighting. And so the fact that there was a gas jet in a room doesn't mean necessarily that was a gas chamber.
Right.
They said he had fake rooms. Well, there's some noted ideas that he had some fake rooms, and what he did with the fake rooms is put furniture and other things that he bought on time and he didn't want his creditors to find. So he put them into a room which didn't have a door, or the door was locked from the inside or something like that. And what he was trying to do was conceal property. He wasn't trying to conceal bodies.
Really?
They didn't find any bodies at the murder hotel. They didn't find any remains at the murder hotel.
So that murder hotel, I'll go through basically the research that I had done.
Yep.
I had heard that there were stairways that led to walls and that there were doors that didn't lead to rooms, and it was extremely, much like a maze. And you'd walk around confused, and there were plates on the floor so that when someone stepped on that particular plate, like a lever, it would notify the occupant in H.H. Holmes's bedroom, which was him, and he would know that that person was on the move, and he'd be able to go navigate the hotel as he understood it. The only person that truly understood it, possibly the architects. But even with the architects, he was firing, rehiring, firing, rehiring, firing, rehiring. It was a constant cycle of construction in the hotel.
And I don't think that constant recycling was done for deception as it was for avoiding paying people.
I would pretty much assume, because he was, from what I saw, an extremely money-driven individual.
Well, he was a bright individual, They called him doctor. There's a reason.
Do you believe that here's a constant theme that I had heard in my prep for this, that he chased becoming a doctor, and he wanted to get through medical school as fast as he could, and he wanted to learn as much as he could because he was not so much driven by becoming a doctor, but he wanted to create a particular type of medicine or practice that would lead him to deep pockets.
Well, I think he was in it for the money.
Yeah.
All of his endeavors were money-driven. Even his murders were money-driven.
Do you think that he enjoyed the murders, or do you think he saw it just as
I think he saw it just as a means of
profit?
Yeah.
Do you think
he had to do it because he had to support his habit?
Right.
And his habit was making more money.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of books written about him.
Sure.
10. Interestingly enough, only one of them was written back in the century that all these crimes occurred. All the rest of them are rather modern, 1970 and up.
Right.
So there's a lot of books. I'll just give you a few. Let me give you a few of those. And Sorry about that.
No, you're good. It's do you consider him a narcissist?
Oh, sure.
What other character traits do you think may attribute to?
Delusions of grandeur. I think he thought he was
The man.
much more important than maybe he really was. Look at his picture. That's a mugshot. That's a mugshot of him.
Yes.
In his, depending on where you come from, if you're from UK, you call that a bowler, that hat. If you're from the US, you call it a derby.
Sure.
Do you see why they called it a bowler? Turn it upside down, it looks like a bowl.
Yeah, you could eat soup out of that.
Right, exactly. So he dressed like, and that's a mugshot.
Sure.
So he played the part of a sophisticated gentleman. He dressed like a sophisticated gentleman. He talked very, he was a smooth talker.
Yeah. And
he got banks to go along with building the hotel to help finance it. He had the paperwork to prove it. Of course, it was all fake, but he had the paperwork to show that he was successful in other areas. One of the books that a lot of people refer to is "The Devil in the White City," which was in 2003, written by Eric Larson, and that's what he was called, the White City Devil. There was another one done recently in 2017 called H.H. Holmes: The True History of the White City Devil. So, The Beast of Chicago is another title. The Murder Castle of H.H. Holmes. And you can see what these people are looking for. That was done in 2011. There's even a new one that came out this year in 2025, H.H. Holmes: A Twisted True Crime Story. So there is, and an interesting one, the last one's a 3-pack collection of his memoirs, is called Holmes' Own Story. Confessed 27 murders, lied, then died. That's the title of that particular presentation. So there's been a lot written about him, not as much as written about the Kennedy assassination. We talked about that. There was 1,500 or more articles and books written about the Kennedy assassination. So where did H.H. Holmes practice, not his being a doctor, but where did he practice his crimes? Well, most notable was in Chicago with what went on at his business there. And then Pennsylvania, the murder of Benjamin Purcell, and then his 2 children. That is who he was executed for the deaths of those 3 people. And Purcell was a scam artist that worked with H.H. Holmes. And he probably wrote out a sizable insurance policy on him and then killed him so he could collect the insurance.
I had heard that they were going to split the proceeds of a prior victim, but then instead of splitting the proceeds, Holmes just killed him.
They would also find people who had been recently deceased and pass them off as somebody who they had an insurance policy on.
Yeah.
And of course, identification couldn't be done like it's done today.
Sure.
DNA and fingerprints and all kinds of things. Today, that wasn't the option back in 1890s.
Yeah, just 130 something years ago.
Yes.
As we just discussed with the Lizzie.
133 years ago this past week.
Yes.
So where did he commit his crimes? Well, we know he got involved with murder in Pennsylvania, 1 murder in Toronto, Canada, New Hampshire. When he was young, he did some petty fraud up there. Vermont, swindles in Vermont, while he was going to school. In Michigan, he was accused of insurance scams while a medical student, grave robbing, and he wasn't the only one that was grave robbing. He had some accomplices, and this is how he learned how to rob graves so he can get the bones to sell them to other medical schools. Illinois, there were fake businesses, property scams, pharmacy fraud. In Texas, he traveled.
Oh, he did.
He had a land deed. He was going to build another Holmes's castle down in Fort Worth. He was arrested in Missouri for horse theft. He was in Colorado. That's when he must have got married, when he was in Colorado. Real estate fraud, false dealings while traveling under aliases. So a good portion of the United States has dots all over it where H.H. Holmes did his business.
Yeah.
Whether he was the murderer he said he was, that's irrelevant because he was a murderer. He was tried and convicted of the murders of 2 children and the adult Benjamin Pizzell. He also killed Pizzell's daughter up in Toronto, Canada. And so we know that he's responsible for a number of deaths. But this aura of who he was, H.H. Holmes, is not quite legit because there never was a real H.H. Holmes or any of the other dozen or so aliases that he used. Those are all fake. He never tried to pretend he was somebody else. He had these fake names. He didn't try to take identity fraud.
Sure.
He was making up names. Because identity fraud these days, that's kind of a big deal, and we have to watch where we share our personal information, whether it be online or in text or something like that. You have to be careful of it. Back then, things were a little bit different. They weren't the record keeping that there is done today. So he would just be able to make up a name, a catchy name like H.H. Holmes.
Something that I had heard, and I learned this through talking to people, and my knowledge on this realm really sticks to more like the 70s and the 80s and the 60s. So even going back further, I'm sure it's more true. But police departments didn't really share information with each other, especially between different agencies.
Right.
So if you have a police department in Boston, there wasn't, or New Hampshire, or even, Boston to New Hampshire, they weren't really sharing information to each other. It was more of a, we're going to keep our documents to ourselves, and then they're on their own. So people could jump around. There wasn't a massive, database because, obviously electronics hadn't really gotten to that point yet, not for another 100 or so years. But, there wasn't the record keeping that there was, so people could just move around and jump around.
Well, just 25 or 30 years ago in this state, we had the Massachusetts State Police. We had the Registry Police, Registry of Motor Vehicles Police. We had the MDC Police, which was the Metropolitan District Commission, Boston Area Police. So we had all those different police forces. Then every local city and town had their own police department.
Sure.
So Massachusetts knew that was a problem. There were too many jurisdictions within jurisdictions. State police were all over the state. MDC was the Boston area. And we still do. We have the transit police now. That's a separate agency unto itself. So back probably 30 years ago, they combined the Registry of Motor Vehicles Police, the state police, and the MDC police and made it one unit. So you didn't have all these separate jurisdictions with not sharing information and things like that. So H.H., they said he almost didn't graduate from med school because he had promised some widowed hairdresser that he was going to marry her, and that almost held up his graduation. That's hard to believe that
I had heard a lot about that.
Yes.
That's a very interesting.
Yes.
I can kind of give a little rundown, maybe.
Sure.
So what happened is that he was a player, and he had a married wife, but he also had a mistress, someone that I believe he had married at that point. So he had two wives, one legally, one, illegally. And the second wife had found letters that he had been writing to the first wife and went to the university, the president of the university, and was like, you need to hold up his graduation and him getting his degree because look I have letters right here. He's lying. He's a liar. And at that point, that type of lie was extremely prohibited, adultery, if you will. And the university, I had heard that one professor voted him down, but he passed barely. Like he got the degree barely. And on his walk, while receiving the diploma, so he gets the diploma in his hand, and he goes and he shakes the hand of someone who backed him and said, "No, this is false. The lie is false, and H.H. Holmes is not this type of person." As he's shaking the hand of that person that backed him in that particular case, in that court case, he basically told the person, he goes, "Haha, I was lying to you." And got his degree, and there was nothing that he could have done.
Of course, he was Dr. Mudgett at that time.
Yes, now he had officially taken the alias Dr. Mudgett. And,
Mudgett was his given name.
Sure.
So H.H. Holmes is the first. As soon as he graduated out of Michigan, he assumed the H.H. Holmes. That was his first and favorite.
Yes.
That was his favorite alias.
It is catchy.
Especially with the bowler hat.
Yes.
You got the derby and you got the mustache.
That's another thing is I had heard a story about H.H. Holmes involving mustache wax.
Oh, really?
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
Okay, so I'll go over this quickly. What happened was he was rooming in basically a rooming house while going through medical school, and the landlord was kind of this guy's a little strange, but whatever it was.
Kind of sketchy?
Kind of sketchy. And there's a particular reason why I can explain why involving baby carcasses. But one of the gentlemen in the house had taken a little bit of H.H. Holmes's mustache wax. Ooh. Such a Victorian thing. Mustache wax.
Yeah.
And H.H. Holmes nearly beat him to death physically over that. So it's an interesting.
Death by theft of mustache wax. Say that 3 times quickly.
I'm not even going to try because I'm going to get roasted.
There's a question for our watchers, and let us know if you find out. Can you still buy mustache wax?
I know you can.
That's the question of the day.
I know you can buy beard oil. I have beard oil. I don't use it, but it was a gift of mine. It's kind of like I polish my shoes every so often. I think that's
with that. Oil for
no.
No,
but it's kind of like falls into that type of thing. Like you polish your shoes and you oil your beard. I don't know. It's mustache wax. It's kind of interesting. Right. But the baby story, the landlord of that particular property, I don't think that they were not having a romantic relationship. But the landlord of that property had smelt something coming from H.H. Holmes' bedroom, and she went in there like, what is going on? And he was away. He wasn't at the property. And she took a broom and stuck the broom underneath the bed. And would you believe it? Out comes a specimen attached to a plank board. And it was a dissected or in the process of being dissected infant or baby. I'm not sure the age of the specimen. But she said that she could never get that out of her head and that it still haunted her even years later following specific reports.
Well, they always said that Dr. Mudgett did very well in his dissection classes.
Yes, what I heard was he was extremely interested in dissection and he was extremely interested in chemistry, and that is why he left his first university and had gone to, it was Mississippi, right?
No, Michigan.
He
went from Vermont to Michigan.
He had left Vermont because there wasn't enough dissection and chemistry courses, and he felt that the university was doing him a disservice, and he had gone to Michigan to pursue higher education in those particular fields.
Well, interestingly enough, at that time, he was the only graduate of the University of Michigan Medical School that was ever executed. I don't know if that's changed since then or not, but at that time he was the only executed graduate.
So crazy.
Go University of Michigan. Is that where Tom Brady went?
Yes.
I think so.
Yes, because I have that Tom Brady sports card and it has him in the Michigan jersey. The Wolverines, is that right? Am I right? Yeah.
Well, somebody has certainly got to tell you, and I should know that with my football background, but
Rich wrote an excellent novel called Ones and Twos. It picks it describe. Actually, I'll let you describe. It's your
Ones
novel.
and Twos is a nonfiction mammoth book, large coffee table type book that examines the number one, number two draft picks of the NFL from 1967 when the American Football League and the National Football League merged. And this ended the turmoil within football of two separate leagues, two separate drafts. And they merged together, so there was one common draft, and the resulting game at the end of the season was, or later became, the Super Bowl.
Right. And we're pretty much wrapping up here with H.H. Holmes.
Yes, we are done.
But I want, if you're comfortable with it, I remember we were in a meeting, you and we were talking with my full-time employment, my general manager, and another coworker of mine, and you had told us a story about how you had made contact with the person who was in chapter 1 of Ones and Twos.
Right.
Would you feel comfortable telling that story? Because that story was really interesting. It had me and everybody else in that room locked in. Would you want to tell that story?
I'll get quickly.
Kind of like as like a preview as to what Ones and Twos actually is.
And you wanted to preview what we're going to do on our next show.
Sure, yeah. So we'll go with Ones and Twos, and then we'll talk about the next show, because the next show is really interesting. And I actually have like a little flyer right here, but I'm gonna show that after this little Ones and Twos.
They call that a tease.
A tease, yeah. We're gonna tease the audience.
Okay. In 1967, number one was Bubba Smith, who's known more for his acting career. He was in all the Police Academy movies. Clint Jones was the number 2 pick that year. And I couldn't find too much information on him. I know he was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings, so I called the Minnesota Vikings, asked for their, do they have a historian? And this gentleman got on the phone and said, hello, in a voice that seemed to be older than mine. And I asked him if he knew Clint Jones, and he said yes. He remembered him, and I said, well, I'm trying to find out. He ran back a touchdown either on a punt or on a kickoff, and I'm trying to find out what the team was that he had this touchdown against. And this gentleman on the other end said, I was there. And I said, great. He said, and then there was silence. And I said, hello? He said, I'm sorry, I forget who the team was, but I was there. And I said, well, thank you very much. And he said, well, last I heard that Mr. Jones was in California, and he's a chiropractor. So I got online and looked up chiropractors and see if there was a Jones, and found a chiropractic clinic in Tonia part of Los Angeles, Brentwood, that area, Hollywood area. And there was a chiropractic clinic and wellness center. And someone named Jones owned it. And I called it up and talked with the receptionist. And I said, I'm trying to find out if Clint Jones if this is Clint Jones that owns the chiropractic clinic, is it the same person who played for the Minnesota Vikings? She said, well, I don't know, but there's football pictures on the wall. And she says, I will ask, what is your question? And I asked her the question about who he scored the touchdown against. And I gave her my number, and she said, I will get back to you if he gives me, if somebody can give me an answer. So 2 days went by. I heard nothing. In the teaching business, we go to bed rather early because I'm usually there at 7 o'clock.
Sure.
So I'm in bed. It's 10 o'clock here, but what time is it in California?
It's going to be like 5 o'clock or something.
About 7 o'clock, 3 hours difference between
the
and us. Yeah. So my phone rings, and I picked up the phone. I said, hello, and he said, is this Rich Little? And I said, yes. He said, this is Clint Jones. I understand you have some questions about football. It was the guy.
That's such an. That's
It
so
was the
crazy.
guy. He has to be now in his 70s. And here he is calling me to see if he can give me information about who he scored the touchdown against. It was against the New York Giants. And he filled me on so many of his things that I didn't know about his career.
Wow.
That I couldn't find anywhere.
How long was that phone call?
45 minutes.
And you had school the next day.
And I was at school the next day. And he told me all about his Rose Bowl career, and it was really interesting. So here's the book. This is what it looks like. It's that thick, and it's heavy. And it's also available on Amazon and on eBay. And the links are shown where Seth puts the link. So if anybody'd like any information on that, give us some comments on that. And now you have an announcement to make.
Sure. So
about our next episode.
The next episode is something that I was really interested in at like 18 years old. I thought this guy was kind of like James Bond, like smooth,
cool.
kind of. Yeah, he was the criminal that a lot of like men were kind of like, oh man, that's kind of cool. I kind of wish I was.
Yeah,
a
he
little
didn't
bit
hurt anybody.
No, he was like very smooth with it, smooth talking.
Raleigh cigarettes.
Yeah, and well, I have a little flyer here. I'm not sure if it's legit or not, but it's still cool nonetheless. We're talking obviously none other than the D.B. Cooper. I'm super excited to cover this episode. We haven't had anybody request this episode, but I was flipping through some files trying to clean out my closet, and I came across this little flyer poster, and I was like, oh man, we got to do this episode. So yeah, I'm extremely interested. It's relatively recent in comparison to Lizzie, happening in early 70s.
70s, yep.
Yeah, early 70s. And I'm super excited to just dive on into this and what I think happened, what possibly Rich thinks happened, and what may have actually happened, and where he went with the $200,000.
Interesting case.
Very interesting case. But do you want to talk about Cold Case to Case Closed and the book?
Yeah, we brought those out today. We have two other books. We have the Cock on the Rock, which is the story about William Bradford, the good guy William Bradford, and this is available on Amazon only. And the reason is that my other two books are self-published, so those are distributed by me, but this one is distributed solely by Amazon. It's on demand, and I ordered these and received them within 3 days. So they put them together on demand, and this tells you about William Bradford down in Plymouth Plantation and what a tyrant he was, and that's kind of a interesting topic.
We have done an episode on William Bradford. I can put the link right here. That'll also be in the description down below as well.
And then the other book, which is we got a lot of traction from people who saw this when we did the 3 Lizzie Borden episodes, and this is called Cold Case to Case Closed. This is written by myself and a co-author named Beverly Folstad, and she's up in Edmonton, Canada. And she gave Lizzie's perspective about being charged, how a woman feels being charged with a double murder, how a woman feels being incarcerated for nearly 10 months between the time she was arrested and the time that the trial took place the following June. So that book is available, same as the Ones and Twos book. They're available both on Amazon and eBay. If you'd like them inscribed, there's a special box on the eBay order blank where you can tell me what you'd like me or who you'd like me to write it to. And we can do that for both Cold Case to Case Closed and for Ones and Twos.
We've got a lot of traction on the YouTube comments. And I had, on the last week's video, we discussed the aftermath of the Borden tragedy.
Yeah, the victims.
The victims. We discussed, like what happened, right. Particularly with their autopsies. Really interesting topic. One of my favorite videos I've ever shot, actually. Right behind the Black Dahlia, which I had a personal connection to that particular case, and I was able to get family input on the Black Dahlia. That's another amazing episode. Very wholesome to produce, and I hope that you guys watch it. But in the comments section, I'm always responding to comments. Rich is always responding to comments, and usually we can get back to you within 12 hours or so. Comments go directly to my phone, so if you send a comment, I get the notification right like that, and I try to respond to the best of my ability. Sometimes it gets me in trouble, but I try to respond as much as I can. But I did have a couple quick questions that went a little unanswered. One particular person asked about about Abby Borden, and they had claimed that she was wearing Andrew's shoes or slippers.
I did see that comment, and I think that was probably a result of the photograph.
Sure.
That was done by Mr. Walsh, a photographer that was hired by the police department. He was not a police photographer. He was just a regular portrait photographer, and they had him come in to take crime scene pictures.
Sure.
And there's a picture of her. Looks like she's praying on the floor. There is no blood, no gore. It just shows her on the floor, and her feet are facing the camera. And the optical illusion from the camera, you got to remember what they're using, time lapse, because there was no fast film, what they call fast film for taking quick pictures. You had to go under the hood and put the glass plate in and hit the exposure. The exposure could be anywhere from maybe 5 to 10 seconds, depending on the lighting in the room. And it appears that her feet are large, and I think it's the angle of the camera. And I think somebody concluded that those might have been Andrew's
Slippers.
Yeah. That's the only reference I've ever heard of that. I've never seen anything in the research that I've done about her wearing Andrew's slippers. It just doesn't seem like a plausible thing to do, especially if his feet were larger. And he was a tall gentleman, about 5'11", which was tall at that time, and she was 5'3". So it doesn't seem like a logical thing. Maybe that was the appearance that somebody got from that photograph.
Yeah. And we also got our first, so this past week has been a couple firsts. We got our first super thanks, which super thank you to you. And we got our first piece of fan mail.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That 18-page document on what that person's particular belief was.
The butcher and the canary.
Yes.
The butcher and his canary.
Did you? Yes.
I did. I read that. I found it interesting.
I'm only halfway through it, but what were your initial thoughts on that?
My initial thoughts about it were that, and I don't think this has been explored a lot, is the fact that Uncle John Morse, had access to that premises. Everybody assumes he must have come through the front door or the side door.
Right.
And this particular person who commented, she alluded to the fact that maybe he used the cellar door, which, interestingly enough, would cover an alibi of him being in the cellar in the initial half hour after the death of Mr. Borden.
So do you think that theory is plausible?
That's a very plausible theory that he went into the cellar.
Yeah.
Number one, there was water in the cellar, running water in the cellar. There was a spigot with a sink, and he had access to do that if he needed to clean up.
Sure.
There was a toilet in the cellar. That's where the toilet was in the Borden home,
right,
in the cellar. A water closet.
Right.
Some people call it the cellar. Some people call it the basement, the lowest level.
Right.
That's where the heating system was. There was a sink for cleaning. That's where the toilet was. There was a storage area for wood for the stove. That was all in the lower basement area of the Borden home. And he had access to that. He claimed when he first arrived that he had been out back amongst the pear trees And that to get to that pear trees, the easy access would have been the cellar door.
Sure. So
thank you for giving us that. That's a really interesting idea.
Yeah.
That Uncle John could have used his means of escaping after the death of Andrew Borden. His means of escape could have been just to go down into the cellar,
Yeah.
and stay there,
Yeah.
until a sufficient amount of time passed. And I suppose he could hear what was going on one floor above on the first floor, with people coming and going, and Dr. Bowen and the first police officer and the
He's
crowd
just
gathering,
trying to clean and scrub away as people are.
right, and the crowd gathering, and that would have been a perfect way to just blend in with what was going on, because within a half an hour of when these deaths occurred at the Borden house, a large crowd had gathered, both on the property and on the street.
Sure.
So he could just mix in with that group.
Very interesting document. I'm still, like I said, about halfway through with it.
Yeah.
I'm only 8 pages in. So I will finish it, and maybe we can do something with it. Once I finish it, we can talk about, maybe we can do like a 10, 15-minute breakdown live stream or something,
Right.
and kind of just get a little bit more exposure, title the video that. But H.H. Holmes,
There he is, the man
Narcissist.
who never was.
got any characteristics for him? Narcissist, murderer, liar,
Cheat,
yeah,
fraudster,
yeah,
schemer,
yep,
grave robber.
yeah. He's got a lot.
He's got a lot of baggage.
Yes, he does. But thank you, Rich, for coming by today.
Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you, everybody. Tune in next time. Want to hear your comments? Send them in. Thank you very much.
Up next, we have D.B. Cooper. We are going to be filming that this week, and it will be out next weekend for you guys. So I appreciate all the views and all the support. Thank you for the super chat or the super like. And stay tuned for DB Cooper upcoming next week. You can shop the brand, coffeebyseth.com, for the official coffee of the show. That'll be linked in the description below, as well as all of Rich's books will be in the pinned comment and link description below. So thank you, and we'll see you guys next week for DB Cooper, the James Bond criminal.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.